Would Scottie Barnes be successful if he wasn't a Toronto Raptor? Without NBA champions, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and an organization that is known around the NBA for developing non-shooters, what would it have looked like if he'd ended up in Cleveland, or Detroit, or Golden State? Welcome to Pensari Basketball. My name is Robert. If you're new around here, hit the subscribe button, grab some coffee, and let's get to it. I've heard people say that Scottie Barnes is the luckiest player in NBA history, that he ended up in the perfect system with the perfect team, didn't have to do too much, couldn't have led Detroit, couldn't have led Orlando, couldn't have gotten minutes in Golden State. I've heard all of this before, and I understand it. This is a rookie who couldn't shoot coming into a team that is known for developing non-shooters. It makes perfect sense why you would feel that way. That if Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs had had Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Nick Nurse, Trent Jr, Masai Ujiri, if they had had that kind of structure around them, that they too could have been successful. Scottie's critics would have you believe that he had it easy, that he was basically Reggie Evans on offense or DeAndre Jordan or something. Those people did not watch Raptor games. Scottie Barnes was second in the NBA in distance traveled on defense. That's not easy. Scottie drew the toughest defensive matchup on every single night. His most frequent matchups included guys like Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, DeMar DeRozan, James Harden, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic. People also don't factor in how difficult it is to go from a first or second option in high school and college to then suddenly being a fourth or fifth option in your own team's pecking order. Basketball is a game of rhythm, and you can't really get rhythm when you're taking 8 shots a game. So the fact that he was that efficient, given how he had to generate his offense, and I did say generate his offense because his critics would have you believe that he was just catching Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam lobs and just rolling to the basket clear. A lot of Scottie's shots were contested. A large majority of his shots were actually self-generated off of offensive rebounds and in transition and off of isolation. And Scottie Barnes was surprisingly efficient as an isolation scorer. Do I think that Cade and Jalen and the other Jalen and Josh Giddey and Franz Wagner and any rookie picked in the top 10 would have had a much better season had they played with the Toronto Raptors? Yes, I do. Do I believe that Scottie Barnes did have a bit of an unfair advantage being drafted into a beautiful situation? Yes, I do. My argument is not that Cade and Jalen wouldn't have been better if they were on the Toronto Raptors. They probably would have been a little bit more efficient. They probably would have been held more accountable. They may have had a more manageable role on offense. It was never my argument at any point that those guys wouldn't have been better as Toronto Raptors. My argument is that the Raptors were better with Scottie Barnes than they would have been with any of those other guys. But I've heard all of this before. I heard it about a guy named Kawhi Leonard. Now, you may not believe this, but in 2018, there were some very smart people who would have you believe that Kawhi Leonard, yes, that Kawhi Leonard, 2 times Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard, All-Star Kawhi Leonard, top 75 all-time Kawhi Leonard, that Kawhi Leonard was a system player. They would have you believe that if Kawhi Leonard had not stumbled into Greg Popovich, R.C. Buford, and the greatest system to develop players in NBA history, that he might have been a bust.
I'm a fun guy.
Sometimes organizations become larger than life in terms of mythology. Myths like Heat culture and the Golden State Warriors being 10 years ahead of everybody else. These aren't facts. These are narratives. Heat culture has produced a lot of busts. The Raptors do not hit on all their draft picks. And contrary to what people think, if the Raptors had drafted Jalen Suggs instead of Scottie Barnes, I don't think we would be talking about a Rookie of the Year. Now, organizational culture absolutely does matter. I'm not going to deny that. It matters that your GM and your coach and your president are on the same page. It matters that people are held accountable. And a lot of young players are not held accountable. Zion wasn't held accountable, and look how that turned out. I think winning is a habit, and some young players have to develop that habit. They don't come in having earned it. I think it matters that when a player comes into a system, that system be about winning. And I think that's why the process went so wrong in Philadelphia. There's a human component to this. I think it matters that when you go to a team, that the expectations be clear. But I also think that it's important that the adults in the room hold you accountable. That when you throw a temper tantrum, that you are not catered to, rather you are told that that's not okay, that we're not going to do that. Do you think Ron Artest might have been a better player if he'd ended up in a system other than the young Chicago Bulls? Do you think maybe Jermaine O'Neal wouldn't have gone into the stands if he'd ended up in a different situation other than Portland as a teenager? OG Anunoby could have gone either way. I think Trent Jr. could have gone either way. But I don't think Fred VanVleet could have gone either way. I think that guy was going to be who he was going to be. There's a self-determination in certain players where you just know that they have a vision for who they want to be, and it's going to get there one way or another. If they have to get traded 15 times, if they have to walk in free agency, some way or another, they are going to get to their idealized version of themselves. And I think Scottie Barnes fits that camp. Let's talk about who Scottie Barnes was before he ended up a Toronto Raptor. He was a very poor shooter. There's no denying that. I watched Florida State, I watched Montverde. That jump shot was all over the place. Sometimes he would miss the rim. Sometimes it was an air ball. It was short, it was long, it was to the left, it was to the right. It was all over the place. The mechanics were off. I believe that had to do with an injury that he sustained in grade 10 to his wrist, but regardless, he did not show promise as a shooter. So I understand all the Draymond comparisons. I want to say that he was a very good playmaker. Since grade 7, grade 8, Scottie Barnes has had elite vision. He was an incredible athlete. I am not denying that Scottie Barnes will be a much better player because he ended up a Toronto Raptor. But what I want to talk about today is who he might have been had he not ended up a Toronto Raptor. Would Scottie Barnes have played in Golden State? Could he have replaced all of Kuminga's minutes and a few of Draymond's minutes? Do I think Scottie Barnes might have been starting in the finals this year? Because God knows he's a better player right now than Kuminga, and they won with Kuminga. What would Scottie have looked like in Detroit? I know a lot of Detroit fans are probably watching this because they've been hating on this video since I made the video about Cade versus Scottie. What's that going to look like? A non-shooter. Well, I think one thing is for sure. Scottie Barnes was developing his shot well before he got drafted. He'd been working on his shot for 2 months after Florida State season ended. The day he was drafted, the very next day he was in the gym working on his jump shot. Scottie Barnes was determined to come into the league as a better jump shooter than he left Florida State. What about in Orlando? What would he have looked like there with Franz Wagner? Man, I think they would have looked amazing. And Scottie is such an Orlando guy. He would have stayed at home in Florida. There would be no shifting around. I think he could have had a better season in Orlando. Where I think he might have struggled a little bit is with Oklahoma City, because Scottie hates losing. He hates losing more than he hates anything. And to have a team which is almost actively tanking for lottery picks, I don't think Scottie Barnes would tolerate 2 years of losing. I think he would grow depressed. I think he would start throwing temper tantrums. I think he would push for a trade. Scottie Barnes hates losing. I think he hates losing enough that he would change any losing culture into a winning culture within a year. How do I know this? I was watching a Rico Hines run, the full 2-hour version, and I counted 4 times when Scottie Barnes blasted either Pascal Siakam or Gary Trent Jr. for missing a defensive assignment. In an exhibition game, in August, he's picking up James Harden full court. This is a guy who cares. David Thorpe was on a podcast last year because his son played with Scottie Barnes, and he said that Scottie Barnes basically changes your practice, and that at Florida State, when he got injured, that their practice was completely different. The atmosphere in that practice was different. The energy was different. That him just simply not being in the gym changed the intensity of everyone in that gym. I don't know if you prescribe to the theory of energy transfer, but there are certain people who vibe different. There are certain people who change a room when they walk into it. It is charisma, it is presence, it is power, it is something. Because when somebody commands themselves in that way, when they are so sure of themselves, like Kawhi Leonard, like a Michael Jordan, those people change the room when they enter the room. They have that aura, the presence. It's a superstar quality. Those people are not timid. They are so comfortable in their own skin that you almost feel safe, like you have a chance with them. I don't deny the fact that Kawhi Leonard did not have a career year for the Toronto Raptors, but there had to be a sense of calm when you're down 2 and you look at his face and there is no fear. And that makes you okay. That makes that situation a little bit more tolerable because you're tied on the road in a game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals and your entire season is on the line. And your coach draws up an isolation play, and you know damn well that the other team has 3 guys who are incredible defenders. And because that guy's name is Kawhi Leonard, you feel better. If you are on that team, you feel better because he knows he can make that shot. And because he knows he can make that shot, your practice feels different. The energy around your team feels different that's why superstars win championships, because the presence of that player in your gym every day makes you work harder. They are holding themselves accountable. They're going to hold you accountable. You have a shot. You may not always win it, but you have a chance. I'm not comparing Scottie Barnes to Michael Jordan, just so nobody takes that out of context. But I am saying that he has that type of intensity and presence in practice where he can change your culture. And if I'm being completely honest, he has. Because the Raptors in Tampa and the Raptors back home looked very different. And I'm not going to tell you that he contributed way more than the 6.6 win shares that the analytics ascribe to him, but I will tell you, as someone who has been watching the Toronto Raptors for 20 years, that there hasn't been this type of energy around this team in a very long time. Never saw it in the Chris Bosh era. There was a sense of it when Kawhi came. There was a sense of it in Vince's second and third year that people started looking around saying, oh man, we could be really good. Because players know. We may not know as fans, we may not know as analysts, but players know. Players know when there's a guy in that gym who's destined to become one of those great ones. And everybody falls in line, because once you get a guy who's willing to challenge players, challenge the status quo, that's when you win. Because winning in the NBA is hard. There are a lot of teams that have a ton of talent, like the Los Angeles Lakers, that just don't win, because winning starts with commitment and accountability. And the best teams have players who hold other players accountable. Carmelo Anthony never figured this part of the game out. Tracy McGrady never figured this out. Vince Carter never figured this out. That when things are going badly, you have to do something about it. When your teammate crosses a line and you're the leader, you have to stop them. When your teammate is consistently missing defensive rotations, you don't just fold up your hands and say, well, not my fault, not my problem. Scottie Barnes doesn't do that, because Scottie Barnes, even in a glorified pickup game in August, is willing to call out teammates who are doing the wrong thing on the court. And if you're a competitive basketball player and you have even an ounce of pride, you don't want a 21-year-old rookie calling you out. So the next time your feet are a little bit tired and you're thinking, should I, shouldn't I? You know that if you don't, someone is holding you accountable. And it's not your coach. The best teams in NBA history have been held accountable by superstars. That's how you win. You don't win with generational talents. You win with superstars who hold themselves accountable and who hold their teammates accountable. Giannis holds the Bucks accountable. Michael Jordan held the Chicago Bulls accountable. Tim Duncan held the San Antonio Spurs accountable. I don't see Pascal Siakam holding anybody accountable. This is not shade on Pascal. Some guys are not wired that way. I've never seen it. I saw the Raptors lose a lot of games in Tampa while he and a lot of other players on this team missed defensive rotations. I don't remember confrontations. The only confrontation I remember between Pascal was about him not getting playing time. But other people, they can do whatever they want. Not my problem. Not my responsibility. That's not the attitude of a first option. Great players are great no matter where they are. They don't always win. They may not ever win. But the greatest players in NBA history have one thing in common. They hold themselves to a higher standard than anyone else in the gym. And they have a gravitas about them that makes all of their teammates fall in line. The Chicago Bulls have not been back to the finals since Michael Jordan retired. If you need any more proof that it's not the system, it is the players. It is the leaders in your locker room that are changing your culture. Look no further than that. When the Raptors lost Kyle Lowry, they lost their leader. Had they not replaced that leader with a guy like Scottie Barnes, they would have ended up in the lottery again last year. I will tell you this. I think Scottie Barnes would have thrived in Detroit. I think he would have averaged 20 points per game for Orlando. I think he would be pretty depressed if he ended up in Houston or in Oklahoma City, because they're trying to lose, and I don't think he tolerates that. If Scottie Barnes had ended up on the Golden State Warriors, I think he would be an NBA champion right now. I can't think of a situation in which Scottie Barnes would not be great, but man, I'm happy that he's in Toronto, because I think among all the teams that could have drafted Scottie Barnes, I think he found the dream fit for himself, because this is one team where he actually has to work to get touches. Nothing is being given to him, and I think that's just going to make him even better. But to the question of whether he would have been successful on another team, man, Scottie Barnes would have been successful anywhere. Anyways, it's been a fun rant on Scottie. Our community is growing. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. By the time we post this, we'll probably be really close. And may I just say, I love the comments. The comments on these videos are incredible. And as someone who has to actually respond to them, may I just say thank you for leaving smart and insightful comments. It's really fun to actually engage with everybody in this community. If we haven't earned your subscription at this point, I'm sorry to say we're gonna have to try harder next time. Thank you so much and have a great day.
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
He's right there.
Yeah, the glasses, there you go. All right.